Hi everyone, welcome to Ask the Egg Whisperer. I know I look like a chef right now, but the way I think about myself is this. I'm basically a momlet maker. So I think it's really fun that I'm wearing my little scrub hat today. I might be having a little bit of a bad hair day as a chef's hat. One of my dear friends actually sent this to me as a gift. I actually got a whole bunch of cool gifts this week, so I'm going to be sharing them with you throughout Ask the Egg Whisperer tonight. So thank you for joining. I hope you'll enjoy the hat. I hope it's not too distracting. And I'll remind people while I'm wearing it because I'm channeling my omelet making. Um, I don't have any omelet making abilities, just momlet making. Who am I kidding here? So let's get started with Elizabeth's question. So Elizabeth asks, hi, Dr. Aimee, I'm 34 years old and suffering from recurrent pregnancy loss. We had a son in 2017 with a very easy pregnancy and delivery. Since then, we've had 3 losses, one at 6 weeks on its own, a blighted ovum that stopped growing at 6 weeks, and an 8.5-week loss after seeing the heartbeat 3 times. I've had 2 D&Cs, and unfortunately, chromosomes were not tested on the 8.5-week loss. I was also put on Lovenox and baby aspirin for that pregnancy due to possible antiphospholipid antibody syndrome, and it still didn't work. I'm PCO-ish, AMH 6.5 normal BMI, and thyroid and hormones all normal. TUSHY check done with the exception of sperm, and our karyotypes are normal. Do we have just really bad luck? Do we need to do IVF with PGS testing? Should my husband get his sperm checked? We're trying letrozole with Ovidril, trigger shot, and timed intercourse to make sure my egg is mature. At a positive test, my doctor said that they're going to put me on prednisone, Neupogen, progesterone, Lovenox. Thank you for all you do. Okay, Elizabeth, what you've experienced and shared with us is something that so many other people have also experienced. So thank you for reaching out and sharing your question with me. Here's the thing. You mentioned the TUSHY method, but there's another method I want you to look at, and that's the ANGEL method. And it sounds like you've already done so many of the things that are in that. So you can go to angelmethod.com to learn more about it. So what have you done so far? You did the antiphospholipid antibody testing. Check. You did your AMH level. Check. How about anatomy? What about a uterine septum? Have you had that looked at? Have you asked your doctor, have you ruled out adenomyosis as a possibility as to why this keeps happening to me? It sounds like you've had D&Cs, so any type of surgery, even if a God touches you, it can cause scarring. So have you asked your doctor, have you ruled out Asherman syndrome? So those are the kinds of things that I think about in a case like yours, where you're 34 years old and everything looks pretty darn good. I'm thinking anatomy, and I'm also thinking chromosomes. Chromosomes of you and your husband. So make sure you've looked at that, and that is the G in the ANGEL method. From a PCOS standpoint, I have a feeling based on what you've shared so far that you've already looked at all of that and everything has come back normal. But if not, do look at your testosterone, your TSH, your prolactin, your hemoglobin A1C, and make sure that everything is optimized. And last but not least, yes, I do think that sperm DNA fragmentation testing in certain cases can be helpful to look at if you've had a number of miscarriages. Even if the sperm sparkles, sometimes that sparkly sperm can still have high DNA fragmentation. So thank you for asking your question, and I really hope my answer helps. And I also would suggest that you take CoQ10 if you're not on it already. I hope my chef's hat, my momlet hat, isn't too distracting tonight. This next question is from Andrea. And Andrea says, hi, Dr. Aimee, I just turned 43 and I have diminished ovarian reserve with an AMH of 0.16. My FSH fluctuates from 9 to 24 and my follicle count is between 5 and 6. I've had a number of IVF cycles and only seem to get one mature follicle. I've done high and low dose protocols, including estrogen priming, but still only get one mature follicle while the other follicles stop growing. Would you suggest going with mini protocol next time, or might natural IVF be an option given that my body seems to only want to produce one mature egg? Thank you for your insight. So Andrea, at 43 with an AMH of 0.16, I would say that you're pretty darn persistent. At an AMH of 0.16 at 43, it's very important to have realistic expectations as to what you would get from treatment. And it sounds like you actually do. And that's great. What you're saying is, look, I know that I'm only going to get one egg. But have you asked your doctor what is the likelihood of that one egg being able to grow into a healthy embryo? Have you asked for an actual percentage? I'm going to tell it to you. It's probably around 2 to 4%. Is 2 to 4% 0%? No. Very soon, because it happens to all of us, it will go to 0%. So my recommendation is to Watch the waves coming in. What I mean by waves, I mean the waves of eggs. Look at your follicle count at the start of the cycle and see if it's at least 2. Then look at it again maybe 2 weeks later and see if it's at least 2 again. And my goal when I'm taking care of someone over the age of 40 is really try and get at least 3 mature eggs. That's when it feels like it really makes sense to move forward with IVF. Otherwise, why put your body through all of that? Why put your body through something that has such a low chance of working? However, I can tell you this, if a guy has 1 sperm cell, we would rally around that 1 sperm cell and be like, let's do this. And that's my approach for women over the age of 42. Even when there's just 1 egg, I'm going to do whatever I can to help that person if that's her priority, for me to fight for that egg. But at the same time, when something doesn't work, emotionally, it's draining. Financially, it's draining. And so if you didn't expect that it might not work and it didn't work, then you can imagine how much you might suffer emotionally and psychologically. So my recommendation to you is if you still want to keep trying, take my special sauce. And when I mean my special sauce, I should call it the Aimee sauce. There's no such thing as Aimee sauce. Don't Google Aimee sauce. There's no Aimee sauce. And that's CoQ10 NAD. And make sure you're taking a good prenatal with fish oil. And I've seen some cool stuff happen. I've had patients 43 with 1 follicle, 1 egg. I can think of someone right now, her FSH was actually 21 at the start of that cycle. And I triggered her, I think it was like day 13 even. And I was like, I gave her the talk. I said, we're doing this, but it probably won't work. And I'm never going to say that again. I'm just going to say it once so that we at least had that talk. And it ended up working. So, okay, next question is from Assel. Assel says, I'm 33 and a half years old and my AMH is 1.1. How much would be my AMH at 35? And how much AMH values is considered too low to get pregnant? Okay, that's a really great question because I feel like as soon as people get AMH, they start Googling it, they start searching it, and then sometimes they get misinformation. So here's the deal. Your AMH level may not change by much between the age of 33 and 35. It might change more rapidly after the age of 37, but honestly, you wouldn't know unless you tracked and trended it. As far as how much AMH is considered low to get pregnant, I'll be a smart aleck and I'll say 0. And what I mean by that is I've had patients with undetectable AMH levels like 0.04, 0.05, and they've gotten pregnant with their own eggs. And it's been a healthy pregnancy. But I've also had patients with levels that are 3.0 and not a single embryo has been normal because of egg quality issues despite having a really high level. So AMH, a couple of names for it, always mean hormone. One of my best friends, Catherine DeOgarte, has named it that, and I share that with you. She's also a fertility doctor. And then always meandering hormone, because there are always some slight variations with the hormone over time. So I would never take your level, tattoo it on your forehead, and think this is me and this level defines me, because it doesn't. AMH level is just a guide. It just kind of teaches you as far as how many eggs to expect from an IVF cycle, what treatments you should be thinking about, when you might be seeing menopause, if it's going to be sooner than later, and maybe help you design a fertility treatment plan for you. So I would say if you're 33 and a half and you want 2 kids, I would consider freezing eggs, embryos, or both. This next question comes from Dana, and Dana says, hi, we've been trying to conceive for almost 3 years. I'm 37 years old. 1 natural miscarriage in May 2020. I moved on to IVF in June of 2020. We retrieved 8 eggs, made 4 embryos, 1 that was a 4AA and 3 that were 4AB, all untested. First FET in September of 2020, 2 embryos successful, but I miscarried at 5 weeks, 3 days. Second FET in October of 2020, unsuccessful. Further testing revealed high prolactin, 68.8. I just had an MRI that confirmed a small pituitary adenoma. Also tested for antiphospholipid antibody syndrome. I'm going to see an endocrinologist and hematologist next week for next steps. Currently prepping for another retrieval to hopefully get more embryos. Moving forward, what do you suggest to increase our chances of conceiving? On top of the obvious medications, most likely would be prescribed. So Dana, I'm not sure what supplements you're taking right now, but I would strongly suggest that you take CoQ10 and you take NAD. It sounds like we have an issue of implantation, and I know you've already mentioned the things that you've already done as far as the antiphospholipid antibodies, and you've already done an MRI of your brain, but I'm just wondering what's going on with your uterus. Why did the pregnancy miscarry in May of 2020, And then why did the embryos miscarry at 5 weeks and 3 days in 2020? There's no such thing as 2020. Although I wish I could still be alive in 2020. I do, because I want to live as long as I can possibly live so I can help as many humans that need help building their families. I know, slightly cheesy, super cheesy. I know, very, very cheesy. So the other thing is that when someone has a miscarriage and we can't test the pregnancy tissue, we have to always think that the pregnancy could be normal or not. So in your case, doing genetic testing of your embryos would probably be the best puzzle piece for you. But I think when you have a situation where you had miscarriages before and you just don't know, sometimes you think that doing IVF with genetic testing is going to solve everything. And unfortunately, it sometimes doesn't. And so knowing that your antiphospholipid antibodies were negative is really helpful. Knowing that you have the high prolactin that you're going to treat is really helpful. But I would also do perhaps the implantation testing that I always talk to patients about. Do all the things to make sure that your home is ready for that embryo, and look at your cavity, do a saline sonogram, for example, do your preconception labs, and it sounds like you're on top of that, and keep going. This next question is from Diana. And Diana says, hi, Dr. Aimee. Thank you for answering my question. I'm 36 and I've been actively trying to conceive for the past 2 years. I decided to get fertility testing last year when I turned 35. I was diagnosed with secondary infertility. I have a 7-year-old. At the time, my LH was 5, FSH 6, TSH 3.2, AMH 3.72, follicle count 20, HSG was clear, saline sono showed an intramural thyroid. I then had a hysteroscopic myomectomy in December, semen analysis was normal, and I'm normal weight. I'm told that IVF is my only option, but I feel that on paper my body is working, but it just won't get pregnant. I may have only one shot at IVF. What can I do to make it more of a success? So, I'm looking at here, Diana, and I'm seeing good hormone levels. I'm seeing fallopian tubes that are open. I'm seeing normal semen analysis. I'm honestly not seeing a single thing that tells me you have to do IVF to get pregnant. I think you're right. So who does need to do IVF to get pregnant? So people who need IVF obviously are people who have sperm that is not very fast, so low motility, low morphology, and low count. In a case like that, when you have severe male factor infertility, doing IVF really helps because then you can take a single sperm and putting it into the egg. What else? Fallopian tubes are blocked. You don't have that. Both your tubes are open. Maybe one of you guys carries a mutation that the other one also carries, so it's like a matching game. You guys both carry, let's say, a variant for cystic fibrosis. Then yeah, it would make sense to do IVF. Still not seeing it. Trust your body, trust your gut. Okay, so if you feel like you don't need IVF, then ask your doctor, what are the other possible explanations as to why I'm not getting pregnant? So in someone who's 36 years old, I mean, you could say that it could be age-related, and that's so hard for me to say because when I look at a 36-year-old, I'm like, you're a baby. I mean, I never really say that, but I'm thinking, you're so young and healthy, and you should have good eggs left. But it still could be egg quality driven. So I feel like it's really important for people to hear that it's not that like 40 is when your egg quality starts to go down. It can even be 36. So my suggestion, if your doctor feels comfortable doing this, is talk to them about ovulation induction. A little whiff of fertility pills, maybe 2 eggs in your momlet. I'm just kidding. We don't want twins, but crack 2 eggs during an ovulation and then combine that with insemination and see if that works. Maybe 1 to 3 cycles. And then if you're still not pregnant, maybe give yourself a date and say by June, if I'm not pregnant, then we're going to do IVF. But that's kind of what I would do in a case like yours if you really just didn't want to do IVF and didn't feel like having potentially unused embryos. And those are the things that I think people sometimes forget to talk about before they do IVF is how many embryos am I going to be making? What does my IVF pyramid look like? And what am I going to do if I end up with unused embryos? So I'm going to take a little break here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to show you some of the stuff that I got this week. So you can see my chef's hat. It's actually obviously not a chef's hat, you guys. Everyone knows that I don't really cook. And then I got this week as well that I want to share. It says, I am brave. I am bruised. I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Okay, so that's really beautiful. Then I got something else. This is really fun. Someone actually sketched this for me. So I don't know if you guys know who that is. That's my sister. So I talk about my sister all the time on this show, all the time. And so she's someone who watches the show, and she says, I know you talk about your sister all the time. There's a picture of my sister and I on Facebook, and so she drew that for me. So that's very, very special to me. My sister and I have an extremely special bond, and you guys have heard me share with you how when she was 32, I actually dragged her kicking and screaming, and I froze her eggs for her, literally kicking and screaming. I have other goodies over here I'll just show off later, but for now, that's what I wanted to show you guys. This next question is from Jill. Jill says this: I'm currently doing my first IVF cycle with a diagnosis of unexplained infertility. My egg retrieval is this week, and I'm planning on doing a fresh transfer, but my progesterone was 1.9 the day of the trigger. I'll now have to cancel the fresh transfer and do a frozen transfer. I was on Lupron, Menopur, and Gonal-f for stim. Would you still recommend doing a fresh transfer? Do you prefer fresh versus frozen? Is there anything I can do to make sure my frozen transfer sticks? Jill, great questions. So here's the thing. That whole progesterone thing, a little bit controversial. If you look at the literature, it's kind of, I'll just say, a little bit all over the place. You'll find one study that says if you have a high progesterone level, you should only do frozen embryo transfers. And you'll have another study that says we actually analyzed a whole bunch of cycles and realized there's actually no difference based on progesterone level. You see what I mean? So this is the thing. Your doctor will know what's best for you because they'll know in their hands, in their IVF lab, in the lab that they use to run progesterone, they'll guide you. So the answer is if your doctor says that frozen is better than fresh for you, trust their gut. That's what I would say. But as far as whether fresh is in general better or worse than frozen, my answer is fresh is just as good as frozen. Frozen is just, someone's saying nice hat. Thank you. It's actually my husband. Frozen is just as good as fresh, unless your doctor thinks fresh is better or frozen is better for you. I know, kind of a long answer. It should go with a song, I think. As far as what I prefer, I like to make sure I've answered those 3 questions that I always bring up with you guys. What do you want? What is it going to take? And am I willing to do it? And so it's really important for me to know those 2 things before I do a transfer. And at the time of the transfer, I like to talk through those things again and say, you know, especially if I'm doing a fresh transfer, let's say I have 1 embryo and the patient's, let's say, 37 years old. And I know in 2 years her ability to create another embryo is going to be really, really small. Then I can assure you that I'm going to actually say to her, we may not be able to help you achieve what you ultimately want, and that might be 2 kids. So maybe we do a frozen, bank more embryos before we transfer. So I think at the time of a fresh transfer, it's really important to have that check-in before you actually do the transfer. And sometimes I have patients who come in for their fresh and we just sit there and we chat and we hang out and we talk, and then I'm like, go home, we'll freeze the embryo, come back later. Next question is there anything I can do to make sure my frozen transfer sticks? So the answer is, I wish. I mean, I wish there was something really fancy that we can put in with that embryo to make sure it's like the Gorilla Glue. You know, I wish I could just, I mean, you're not going to coat an embryo in Gorilla Glue, obviously, but I wish that there was something in the IVF lab that resembled that to make that embryo just boop, stick in there and then grow, and then make it grow in a healthy way to prevent miscarriages and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that would be great. I mean, if we can put a man on the moon, you would think that we can do a better job of helping embryos stick and grow. But the reality is the best thing that you can do is control the things that you can control, and that's it. So what can we control? I mean, we can control what we eat. We can control the supplements we take. We can make sure that the lining is great and there's no polyps inside the uterus. We can control our body size, our activity levels. We can control maybe sperm quality on the day of the egg retrieval to make sparkly embryos for a transfer. We can also maybe add acupuncture if that's something that's accessible to you and something that you want to do. The other thing that you could potentially do is implantation testing, like the ERA test and the Receptiva DX test, if your doctor thinks that that's appropriate for you. So those are the kinds of things that I talk to my patients about before each and every transfer, and something that you can talk to your doctor about as well. So this next question is from Stephanie. Let me just take a little swig of my coffee. So Stephanie says, hi, Dr. Aimee. Thanks for what you're doing for your community. Well, you're welcome. I appreciate all your efforts and I'm your fan because I believe knowledge is power. Yes, I totally agree. Thank you. Sorry, I just had to say that. We're trying to conceive for more than 4 years, and in November of 2017, I had an ectopic, and my right tube was blocked but not removed. After 2 years, we tried our first IVF, and we transferred 2 embryos day 3 that resulted in a biochemical. In 2019, we tried a second IVF, 8 follicles, 4 fertilized, 2 reached to day 5, and 6 poor quality. We then transferred the most high quality of them that resulted in a negative test. My AMH is 1.3. Last year in November, we tried our third IVF on a natural cycle, conventional IVF, but fertilization didn't happen. There was no fertilization. What would you recommend for us? Should we continue with IVF in a natural cycle and add ICSI? Meanwhile, I'm taking prenatals, CoQ10, DHA, vitamin E, and vitamin D. So Stephanie, you didn't share your age with me, so I'm really not sure how old you are. If you're watching right now, someone's saying that they love my egg and sperm hat. Why, thank you, Michelle. If you're watching right now, can you just maybe add your age? Otherwise, I'm just going to assume that you're 35 years old, and I'm going to share with you what I would do. In a case like yours, Stephanie, I'm just going to roll things back, and we're going to sit here and talk. Why are we even here? What's our diagnosis? What have you been through? So you already shared with me that you had the ectopic pregnancy, and I'm just going to ask you why. I know that's a silly question. Why the ectopic pregnancy? Well, a couple things. Could it be from a previous pelvic surgery, an appendicitis or appendix that ruptured and you had to have it removed and it caused scar tissue? Could it be from a previous sexually transmitted infection? Or could it be what I think it's a lot of the times, and people don't realize it until it's too late, endometriosis. Endometriosis is horrible for fallopian tubes, horrible for implantation. I'm going to keep going with the horribles, and horrible for egg quality. So you shared with us that you have a few of those things, right? So we have problems with egg quality, embryo quality, and embryo location because of the ectopic. So my concern is that we're not really dealing with what the root cause is in your situation. And so I would talk to your doctor about, have you ruled out endometriosis in my case? And if the answer is no, this is a great opportunity for you guys to start exploring that. Talk about whether you should be doing non-invasive testing to learn more about endometriosis, like the Receptiva DX. Talk about whether doing a hysteroscopy, laparoscopy would make sense in your situation. Talk about whether you should do an HSG again now. Maybe there's a hydrosalpinx that's getting in the way of a healthy implantation. But I would say if you still have it in you to do another cycle, it does make sense that doing ICSI is something that I would do, but I would hold off on transferring until you know more about what's going on with your fallopian tubes, both sides, and your uterus. And I hope that this is helpful. This next question is from Ash. Ash says, hi, Dr. Aimee, I'm about to turn 39 and I'm trying to have baby number 2. I have a 2-year-old that we conceived naturally and easily. Baby number 2 has been a challenge. We've been trying for a year, 1 miscarriage. At 9 weeks, and we had a D&C, no testing was done. Was told it was probably chromosomal in nature, meaning there was a chromosomal issue. Then I had 2 chemical pregnancies. We've done 3 rounds of Clomid, 1 IUI, no meds, and didn't get pregnant. We did the TUSHY, genetic testing, me and my husband, autoimmune, all of it. My AMH is 0.97, FSH is 6. I have 7 to 8 follicles each time, and the doctor has proposed mild stem IVF of Clomid in a shot. What are your thoughts on mild stem? Would you recommend that over regular stem given my numbers? When do you recommend mild stem IVF? So Ash, here's the deal. You got 7 to 8 eggs. I want all of them. I have different approaches for what I do to get all of the eggs. But when you say mild stem, you mean mini stem, and you mean a mini number of eggs, which is a small number of eggs, and I want lots of eggs. So we know it's a numbers game. So at 39 years old, each egg will have about a 10% chance of turning into a or being genetically normal. If that egg turns into a blastocyst, that blast then has around probably a 25% chance of being genetically normal. And so what you've experienced as far as the miscarriage and the biochemicals, that is part of the normal human experience of many, many women who are 39 and up who are trying to have a baby. And so the deal is that you are so lucky to have 7 to 8 eggs. So we want to grow all 7 to 8. If you approach it in a mini stem approach, your doctor might just be trying to target 2 to 3. So you guys all know what I say. Less is more when you have less, but more is always more. However, more can be less if you have really bad hyperstimulation syndrome, which can't happen when you have 7 to 8 eggs. And let me see if I can tie this all together. And then less can be more if you have more if that's how you want to approach things. So there are some people that actually don't want to be on lots of hormones. They actually want less eggs, and that's totally fine. But because you're 39, I would suggest that you try and be a little bit more aggressive with stimulation to try and get all the eggs you can possibly get from a cycle if that feels comfortable for you. In a case like yours, we already know the diagnosis, it seems. We think that it is probably egg quality related to your age, but don't miss out on an opportunity to get that sperm sparkly before you do the egg retrieval. And make sure you've done another semen analysis, look at sperm DNA fragmentation if your doctor thinks that that's could be a potential issue, and then potentially have both of you guys on all the supplements, not just you. Thank you for that question. So Ruby is asking this. Hi, Dr. Aimee, thanks for all you do. I'm 34 with lean PCOS and my husband has male factor. I've been on metformin for 18 months and since being on it, ovulate every month is tracked by my OvuSense device. We had our first retrieval in November 2020 and from, are you guys ready for this? 44 eggs. We ended up with 4 day 5 blasts and 1 day 6 frozen. We're about to start prep for FET. I had a bleed 5 days after a retrieval and then a normal cycle, albeit slightly longer than average after that. It was 36 days and I ovulated as normal. This month, I haven't ovulated, which is a real worry as this has never happened before. My doctor wants to start prep for FET for my next period, but I worry about this change and if I should wait for a normal cycle before starting. Is it normal for cycles to be affected in this way by IVF? So Ruby, the answer is yes. When you go through IVF, sometimes you can have your ovaries be a little bit swollen and the swelling just might take a little bit time to go down. So just like when you take fertility pills like Clomid, you might have a cyst that forms after the Clomid and you have to wait for the cyst to go away. It's the same thing from IVF. You might have a cyst that forms that needs more time to go away. So it is not unusual to have a wonky cycle and in some cases, sometimes, rarely a wonkier second cycle, but for the most part, your cycle should just go right back to normal after IVF. And if not, just do a quick check-in with your doctor, get a level check, get a cyst check, and see what's going on so you're just not wondering or thinking something is wrong. But the reality is, when your next period starts, your uterus is like, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. So you don't need to wait for regular cycles until you do your frozen embryo transfer. This next question is from, let's see here, next page. Gabby. Hi, Gabby. You said hi first. Just kidding. It's really fun answering your questions, but sometimes I really wish I had someone in front of me that I could be talking to. Otherwise, it feels like I'm talking to myself. So this question comes from Gabby, and she says, thank you for taking the time and for answering my question. I'm 41 and I want to get pregnant with my own eggs. I have an AMH of 0.15, FSH of 6, estradiol 111, uterine lining is 7.8, and a week ago, I did a follicle count and I got 8 follicles. My fertility specialist told me that I have a 2% chance of conceiving with my own eggs at my age and with my AMH, and I should consider egg donation. What do you think? Should I ignore the 2% chance and go for IVF, or better try IUI, or just go straight for egg donor? Thank you again. So Gabby, here's the deal. Your AMH is just one little snapshot, and remember what I call it. I call it always meandering hormone. So if you have 7 to 8 follicles, I wonder if your AMH actually might be a little bit higher. So maybe get it checked again and see what it is the second time. If your AMH is 0.7 to 0.8 and you really want to try with your own eggs, I would say go for it. Since your estrogen level was a little bit high, not really high, but a little bit high, that could be suppressing your FSH. I would also repeat your FSH and estradiol levels on day 3 just to get another good check-in about what's going on. I would never tell anybody just go with egg donor, and I would never tell anybody to try IUI over egg donor or IVF. I would just say, you know, what's important to you? At 41, I really want you to be a parent. I'd like everyone to be a parent as soon as possible and stop being a patient. And so we know that your chances are going to be low with IVF with your own eggs with an AMH of 0.1. But it's not 0 and it's not no. So talk to your 46-year-old self. I always say that. I say go 5 years ahead and look back and be like, Gabby, you really should have done this when you were 41. Have that conversation. I wish you could actually really do it. Wouldn't that be cool? So you never have fertility regret. And that's the thing. If you talk to a therapist, talk to your friends, talk to your mom, talk to people who really, really know you, who will listen with their ears and not their mouth, and will help you process how you're feeling and the information that you're sharing with them. And hopefully you'll get to a point where you have clarity. And until you have clarity, feel no emergency. There's no rush to do anything. But if you're still open to using your own eggs, I would say Be as aggressive as you feel comfortable being. If you have a cycle that has 7 to 8 follicles, I would go for it without any delay. I would move forward as soon as you can with IVF. And then if the cycle doesn't look as awesome and the egg's not as sparkly as you thought as you going through the cycle, then convert that to an IUI. And I would say if you're just like over it and you just don't want to go through treatment anymore and you're okay just moving forward with an egg donor, that will surely give you the highest chance of a healthy pregnancy. I mean, that's really the case for even anyone over the age of 35. This next question comes from Rosie. Rosie says, "Hi, Dr. Aimee, our fertility angel." Apparently, and chef tonight with my hat. For those of you who are joining, you're like, what the heck is she wearing? What is this hat? I got a whole bunch of gifts this week, and this is one of them. It's a little scrub hat, and you can see it has little eggs and sperm, and I call myself the momlet maker, so I figured I'm going to wear it like a chef hat, and I might be having a bad hair day too. So Rosie is saying, "I was just wondering if you've shared your AMH results after using True Niagen NAD yet, or when is your self-study ready to be shared? I'm just so curious now. Thank you." Okay, Rosie, it's nuts. So my AMH was like 0.6 and now I'm at 1.4. So what I'm missing is an ultrasound. I'm 44 years old. I'm going to be 45 in April. So I know, hard to believe. I know, but I'm waiting for an ultrasound. That's the next thing. I'm not waiting for it. I just have to do it because I'm curious about what my follicle count looks like too. Because obviously that would be really helpful. About 1 in 5 people can have an AMH that's not representative of at all of what their follicle count is. So that's just something that I need to do to fill in the blanks here. This next question comes from Stephanie. Stephanie says, "Thank you for all you do for us all. You're truly a blessing. I'm 35 years old, 36 in March, been trying to conceive for 4 years, no pregnancy. Started seeing a fertility doctor at another clinic last year. 3 failed IUIs, 1 round of IVF, no male factor, HSG is normal, no PCO-ish, uterine lining is great, AMH is 1.7. Here's the deal, 21 eggs retrieved. I fertilized 50 naturally. I did a 50-50 natural IVF versus ICSI split, 14 fertilized, 6 on the natural side, 8 on the ICSI side, and only 3 embryos made it to blast. 1 graded very good, 2 good, and being sent for PGT. I was shocked that only 3 made it to blast. Sperm numbers were great, so was my hormonal response. Could my diagnosis be poor egg quality? Any testing I should be doing? Any other suggestions for a better outcome on my next round if all come back abnormal? I take NAD, prenatal, CoQ10, no infertility history in the family. Thank you. Peace and love your way." So Stephanie, here's the deal. 35, almost 36. If you got 3 blasts and they're all normal, that's freaking amazing. I mean, the way I think about it is there's a reason why you did IVF, and the reason is there could be an egg quality issue. You're just one of those people that needed to grow 21 eggs to get 3 strong embryos out. I really wouldn't think of it too much more beyond that. So, however, if it turns out that the embryos are not normal, then sure, obviously we're dealing with an egg quality issue that's going to be a little bit more of a challenge, but how do we know it's not sperm? So look at the embryo diamonds. You guys all know embryodiamonds.com. You can go to that website and you can see all the things that I put in there for you guys to know about your IVF cycle, and that includes sperm on the day of the egg retrieval. And when you see that sperm quality, you want to see if there's any way you can make it better, because embryo quality, embryo progression has a lot to do with sperm quality as well. And so you can see if your clinic will have special tools or extra things that they can do in the lab to also help that along, like calcium activation, Pixie, Zymot. Those are the things that can potentially help in a case like yours. But I'm super, super curious about which of the embryos, and hopefully at least 2, will have normal chromosomes for you. That's really what I'm hoping for you. But I would also think about using HGH if you haven't already, and have your husband take the supplements too. But overall, I know it's weird to hear that 3 blastocysts is not a good thing? Or no, 3 blastocysts is a good thing? That's what I'm trying to tell you. It actually is quite a good thing. And for some people, you just got to grow 20 eggs to get 14 embryos to get 3 blastocysts. The typical blast formation rate should be closer to around 50% on average. So when it's lower, yes, we still want to know, like, what's up with that? Why is that happening? Is there endometriosis around? Or have we missed a chromosome issue, like a balanced translocation perhaps? So the good news is that you're genetically testing your embryos, and you'll get a lot of answers from doing that. This next question comes from Kenzie, and Kenzie says, "I'm 32 years old, trying for 2 years. My AMH is 0.4 to 0.9. Last FSH is 19, average follicle count 6. I've had 1 natural chemical pregnancy 1 year ago. I tried a traditional IVF cycle, birth control pills, Lupron, Menopur, Follistim a few months ago. I got 3 eggs. 2 fertilized, fresh transfer, Day 2 embryos didn't work. Eggs were granular. That's what they told me. Transferred doctors to a specialist and decreased ovarian reserve. She primed me with estrase 2 milligrams and testosterone gel, and my follicle count dropped to 2. Then my cycle was canceled. What the heck? What else could I prime with to improve AOC and hope for IVF to work? Thank you. So, Kenzie, you're young. This is awesome. Even though your follicle count is low, you should still, and this is how I'm going to think and believe, you should still have good eggs. But the question is, what the heck? What the heckity heck? Why is this happening to someone who's 32 years old? Let's find out. So how do we find out? Chromosome analysis, Fragile X screen. There actually is a fertility gene panel that you can do through a company called Fulgent, Fulgent, to see if you carry any genes that make it so that your egg age is older than your chronological age. And then the other thing, I think I said everything. Look at anti-ovarian, anti-adrenal, and anti-thyroid antibodies. That's what I would do. And I wish there were better tests that we could do in cases like yours, but at the end of the day, this is the best that we have to give people an answer. And I feel like the answer, if you have one, will help guide you as far as what to do next and how. But you guys hear me talk about this, this wave. Next time I should actually wear, I'm spilling coffee all over myself. I'm going to move it over here because I have a tendency, I might do this and knock it all over myself. What I'm trying to say is next time I should wear a life vest, because I feel like I'm trying to rescue eggs every single day. Anyways, I digress. My point is, you guys have heard me use that wave analogy. And so just because you had that one cycle where you were starting on estrase and you saw your follicle count drop, I would not be discouraged. I mean, that can happen no matter what, with or without estrase. So the one thing I would consider doing is add HGH, no birth control pills, obviously. Stay away from estrase. It seems like your body may not like it. And talk to your doctor about being a little bit more creative and see if they would consider a mid-luteal stem and or duo stem. What we're seeing here is that your egg count might be dropping a little bit faster than you would expect for someone who's 32. And you want to take advantage of the eggs that you have. So one example would be to maybe start cycle day 2, maybe do a mini IVF protocol, Femera, Lupron, gonal F, for example, with HGH and a ganirelix. Retrieval happens. At the time of the egg retrieval, your doctor can actually see the follicles that they retrieve and if there are any little tiny follicles at the same time. If there are little tiny follicles, then your doctor can then talk to you about, hey, you know what? Let's try this again. Start stem tomorrow. I know, like who would do that? But these are some of the things that I do, and I know other doctors do that too, so perhaps your doctor can offer you that as well. This next question comes from Jessica, and Jessica says, I recently went through a cycle of IVF where we transferred one embryo. I received my treatment in Mexico. My question is this, what should I ask of or look for in an OBGYN for my post-transfer prenatal care when I return to the US, especially since the continued care from my IVF doctor will not be easy with 3,000 miles between us? Jessica, let me tell you, your Mexican doctors, they have access to email. They can text, they can call you. I have lots of patients, not lots, but I probably have 2 to 3 patients a year who go to Mexico from treatment, and those doctors really care. So I actually coordinate care for patients who are local who want to go to Mexico. And if they need prescriptions, they'll email me and I'll be like, yeah, I'll order whatever you need here if you can't order it there, if the patient has had it there and then she comes here and she needs more. So I think it's really important for you to get your Mexican doctor's email address, find an OBGYN that's ready to help. I can tell you that most will be extremely helpful. If your if your fertility doctor in Mexico has something that they want you to do, they can literally send an order or send instructions to your OBGYN here to help you. So I'll tell you what I do in a case of a patient who's had a transfer. 8 days later, check a pregnancy test. 2 days later, check another pregnancy test. A week later, do another pregnancy test just for additional reassurance. Monitor the HCG and progesterone if you have a history of a thyroid problem and you're on thyroid medications. Also check your thyroid too. And before you even go, I'm sure you're going to make sure your preconception labs and everything like that are normal as well. Do an ultrasound early if you have a history of miscarriage for additional reassurance or ectopic pregnancy. Otherwise, do a ultrasound about 2.5 weeks after your pregnancy test to see the heartbeat. And that's something that your OBGYN can do for you. So I hope this information is helpful. Okay, guys, this next question, it's a soggy question just because I spilled coffee all over it. This next question comes from Mary. Mary says, on cycle day 4, my lining was 3.5 millimeters. On day 12, today, it's 1.97. One more scan will be done on day 14, but it looks like the cycle of IUI is canceled. Why would the lining decrease? Next month, I'll see a rheumatologist to try and confirm antiphospholipid syndrome. So, Mary, it sounds like to me, if you're seeing a rheumatologist to rule out antiphospholipid syndrome, it sounds like you might have had a history of miscarriages. With that comes potentially a history of instrumentation, meaning having done DNCs. So DNCs can thin out the lining. So the other thing is that I wonder if your ovaries are, if you're actually ovulating, secreting estrogen and thickening your lining. So I'm also wondering what's going on above your uterus as far as like who's talking to your uterus to get the lining thick. So my suggestion is to consider a hysteroscopy if you haven't done one already and see if there's any scar tissue in the lining of your uterus. And I wish you all the best. I don't want you to give up. Just know that there are a lot of things that we can do to get a lining to thicken, like hormones, estrogen. There are different ways of using estrogen to get it to thicken. This next question comes from Anne, and Anne says, oh, okay, so Mary's actually adding here. Thank you, Mary. This is my question. It was a Clomid cycle, also previous 17-week miscarriage. Okay, Clomid is the enemy of uterine linings. Yes, I did just say that. You heard it here, and I'm not worried that anyone's going to get mad at me because I'm the boss of me. Clomid can thin out linings. That's like basically one of the things that it can do. It can be an anti-fertility drug in many cases. So I know a lot of doctors use it, but um, I would say maybe like 7 out of 10 fertility doctors will actually use Femera because of the impact that Clomid can have on the lining of the uterus. And then with the 17-week loss, and I'm so sorry for that, there could be scarring after that pregnancy. So I would strongly suggest a hysteroscopy and maybe transition to Femera instead if you're going to do ovulation induction again. This next question comes from Anne. Anne says, hi, Dr. Aimee. I love watching your lives, by the way. My question is this. I'm 28 years old. After 5 failed IUIs, we decided to try IVF. I did my retrieval on Thursday. I got 19 eggs, 9 fertilized. My doctor said so far we have 3 grade B embryos, but we can get maybe 2 more. Is that a good number for my age, or might it have something to do with the sperm? So it sounds like you're going to have 9 embryos and 5 blastocysts, and I would say that is amazing. The fact that you got 19 eggs and 9 fertilized, you got to wonder how many of those eggs were actually mature. So once you're done with the cycle, schedule a post-IVF consult with your fertility doctor and go through everything. Remember embryodiamonds.com. Go through all the elements in my diamonds and make sure that you're writing notes, you have your binder, you're putting everything in there, and you can ask them how many of the 19 eggs were actually mature so you can see what the fertilization rate was and then find out what the sperm quality was on the day of the egg retrieval. Depending on what your story is and whether you want to do genetic testing or not of the embryos, it's still something, doesn't look like you can consider it now after the fact because it sounds like the 5 might have already been frozen. But I would say your blast formation rate is pretty on par with what you would expect in the best case scenario. But learn more about everything before you decide to do a transfer because that information might help guide you for the future. So for example, if the sperm quality was low, remember my saying? Yes, it's always nice to have sperm on ice. Okay, this next question comes from Marnie. And Marnie says, I just had a blighted ovum with a PGS normal embryo. It was 5AA. For those of you guys who don't know what a blighted ovum is, basically it's referring to a sac inside the uterus that doesn't have a yolk sac or an embryo inside. I think I want to take a break, but how likely is this to happen again? I have 3 embryos that are graded 3BB, and I'm terrified since they aren't as great. So Marnie, I totally agree. I would be terrified too. It's terrifying to go through everything that you've gone through and then think that you're going to be pregnant again and not know what's going to happen until you show up that day for the ultrasound. But I have to reassure you that you have still a really good chance of having a healthy pregnancy. What we know from embryos that resulted in a miscarriage is that we can actually say that the embryos that are frozen have pretty good pregnancy potential because that embryo that came from that same batch, while it didn't turn into a live birth, the fact that it actually turned into a pregnancy is actually a good prognostic indicator for what you still have frozen. So I'm just wondering, what do we know about the uterus? Have you ruled out a septum, scar tissue, adenomyosis, endometriosis? Those are the things that I would want to know. So I would repeat a cavity evaluation before you transfer again. Look at all your preconception labs, go through angelmethod.com and make sure that there isn't anything that you haven't tested for that's on that list, because that might be really important. And even though you had implantation, I still think that it does make sense to consider doing implantation testing before your next transfer. It doesn't necessarily have to be the ERA test, but maybe consider doing the Receptiva DX test first. Okay, this next question, I got my soggy paper here. Oh, let me just show you one of my other fun gifts. Ooh, let's see here. Oh, I got a cute card. It says, "You are the best." Let me see if I can read it. Thank you for your endless support. Thank you for believing in my sparkle. You are the best. That's very, very sweet. Okay, this is from Natalist. Natalist here. I have a Made in USA BPA free water bottle. Fun. I don't drink enough water. I drink a lot of this, which is coffee. Let's see here. Ooh, this is sexy. So I also have, honey, I'm coming home. Just kidding. Maybe I'm not. Actually, I'm kidding, because I still have a lot of work to do, so I'm not coming home. So this is the Natalist The Lube Fertility Friendly Personal Lubricant. Okay, so I think I'm actually going to do some sperm testing on this. We'll see what we find. Oh, and this is fun. A prenatal for him, vegan, gluten-free, and free from artificial coloring, preservatives, and flavoring. Also from Natalist. So that's fun. Okay, well, I'm going to get that sperm-friendly lube tested here very soon. It looks like it comes in a little discreet package. Maybe I'll try it too, and I'll tell you guys what I think. My husband is saying, big tease. I know, honey, I'm sorry. So I'm going to actually go back to Marnie's question, because Marnie is actually bringing up that she actually did both the ERA and Receptiva DX test, and they both came back normal. So what I would also do, Marnie, is ask your doctor if you've ruled out adenomyosis. The Receptiva DX test, you guys, isn't really good at picking up adenomyosis. It's silent endometriosis that it's correlated with. And so if your doctor thinks there's any chance you can have adenomyosis, I would treat before you do another transfer. And the way of treating that is basically very similar to treating endometriosis, and that would be doing a month of Depo-Lupron, and in my case, in cases like yours that I have with my patients, if let's say I've ruled everything out, like a septum with a hysteroscopy, is to consider Depo-Lupron, Femara, Agestin just for 1 month, and then you can transfer. SIRT1, SRT1 is another stain that you can add on to the Receptiva DX test. So I'm not sure, you probably just did the BCL6 stain, so that might be something else to consider. And look at the score and see exactly what it is. Remember, have your official reports, and I'm sure you do, and I'm sure they're negative, but that's one other thing to consider doing. So next question comes from Jojo. Jojo says, "Hi, Dr. Aimee. Thank you for being such a beacon of light for us. Your witty sense of humor really brightens up my day. You very often mention the Receptiva test. Unfortunately, it's not available in Europe. My clinic performed a different test in the endometrium, but I got an impression that my doctor wasn't sure how to interpret it. On day 5 post-ovulation and taking progesterone, my BCL6 levels were positive in 50% of cells in the functional layer and negative in 100% of cells in the basal layer. Biopsy from day 7 showed positive in 90% and positive in 5% in the different layers, respectively. I have no idea what this result means and whether it can be an indication of an endometriosis. My doctor wasn't able to answer my question. The results also contain a description that on day 7, my endometrium was showing markers of active inflammation. My last transfer of a PGS normal embryo failed, and I'm 41 and I have only 3 embryos left." So Jojo, that's what the Receptiva DX test is. The Receptiva DX test basically looks at the BCL6 stain. BCL6 stain is all you need. So if you have a really, really positive stain, you can just assume that it's positive, and you should ask your doctor for treatment. In the US, we have Depo-Lupron. I can't remember off the top of my head the version in Europe. I think it's Depo-Lupron. I'm just kidding. I'm just assuming you're from France. I'm just cracking myself up tonight, apparently. But I do think that you can assume that your test is positive, and I think doing 1 to 2 months of Depo-Lupron or your version of it is probably one really good thing to do. The other thing I tell my patients, I didn't bring it up, is to take a calcium supplement daily when you're on Depo-Lupron, and a supplement called N-acetylcysteine, as that can also decrease inflammation inside the uterus. As far as the active inflammation that your doctor is seeing, ask them how they came to that diagnosis. Is it because they saw plasma cells? Do you need a course of antibiotics? So sometimes if you see active inflammation, you might benefit from 2 weeks, for example, of an antibiotic called doxycycline, and the diagnosis is actually endometritis. So ask your doctor, do I have endometritis and should I be treated for it? And I feel like given your history, if you treat the BCL6, you probably have, assuming your embryos are really strong, you can then say that you might have a 70% chance or better of having a successful implantation. And for those of you who are watching this, you actually can get the Receptiva DX test in Europe. They have instructions on their website as to what to do. Doing a biopsy is really easy. You just put it in a tube and you send it to Seattle. That's where the Receptiva DX test is actually run for European patients. So it is something that you can have done, but it sounds like you got it done, JoJo, on your own with your clinic. And now everyone here, we're all hearing how the results can be interpreted. So I think you can assume that it was positive. This next question comes from Shira. Shira says, hi, Dr. Aimee. I've had 4 miscarriages since having a child in 2017, 2 chemicals and 2 missed miscarriages at 8 to 9 weeks after strong heartbeats. My husband has 64% DNA fragmentation and 3.5% morphology. I have Hashimoto's and they think it's PCO-ish, 24 follicles, insulin resistance, treated with metformin and hair growth on my chin. My AMH is 2.3 and other numbers are good. My karyotype came back clear. We've spoken to 3 different doctors. One said go straight to IVF with ICSI for PCOS egg quality and sperm DNA fragmentation. The second said IVF and sperm DNA isn't a thing. And the last said we can try with Clomid or IVF, but no guarantee we won't have a miscarriage. I've had the HSG and SAS. I've been tested for killer cells. With the last pregnancy, we were on progesterone, baby aspirin, Lovenox, just to see if it would help. We're still waiting for the fetal testing from the DNC. What else can we do? What would you recommend? Shira, I got some tips for you. Fix whatever you can fix. What can we fix? When you're a woman and you're told you have bad eggs, for example, there's really not much we can do. I mean, you can fix like your lifestyle, your diet, the toxins in your life, stuff like that. However, when you have a sperm DNA fragmentation issue, there are actually things that you can do. And I'll just kind of tell you what I think those things are. And I actually created, I know you guys, surprise, surprise, ballsmethod.com just for this. So the B in the balls, is background genetics, for example, looking at sperm DNA fragmentation. You've already done that. So the question is, where is that coming from? And that's where the A comes, and that's anatomy. So are there varicoceles? Are there scrotal varices, which are dilated veins that sit on the testicle, that are causing this? Is it related to labs? And what I'm talking about are diabetes. Maybe he has a thyroid problem as well, or low testosterone. Those things can be fixed. And guess what? The sperm DNA fragmentation is going to come down. Let's look at his lifestyle. What is his body size? Is he signed up for a sperm fitness challenge yet? Maybe this is the perfect time. And then S, sex and supplements. We don't have to talk about sex. We talked about it a little bit earlier. I blush when I talk about sex. As far as supplements, making sure that he's on all the right supplements that could help improve sperm quality. And then before you do your IVF cycle, really look at the DNA fragmentation and then see if your doctor can talk to you about 3 different things. Thing 1, I can't find it right now. Oh, there it is. So there is a way that you can do a DNA fragmentation test with this little chip. You can check the sperm DNA fragmentation before you run it through it, and then check the DNA fragmentation on the other side. And what I'm talking about is Zymot fertility right here. So I've actually seen cases of DNA fragmentation even over 60%, and you run the sperm through that chip and the DNA fragmentation plummets. And that's what we want. If your sperm DNA fragmentation is up, we want it to be down. That seems like it should roll into a really good joke, but I'm going to stop there. And the other way of doing things would be with Pixie, and sometimes you can actually combine the 2, Pixie and Zymot, or Zymot and then Pixie. And last but not least, you can also aspirate sperm from the testicle in a case where the sperm DNA fragmentation is really high. So I know a lot of guys don't like hearing that. My husband always tells me, do not talk about putting a needle in the balls when I am around. And so I'm very sensitive. I actually had a guy once. This is a true story. This is pre-COVID. They were actually sitting here in front of me, and I was talking to them about this stuff, and he actually passed out. Like, I was mentioning it, and he literally, like, in his chair passed out. Like, so I've learned that I only talk about it here. So my recommendation for you is to remember that it should be diagnosis before treatment. Get to the root cause of the situation. Do everything you can to fix it. See as many specialists as you need to. Build that fertility team around you. And it sounds like you're doing all of those things. And do that before you do your IVF cycle. Okay, next question comes from Nanda. Nanda says, hi, Dr. Aimee. I've had 2 biochemicals and an 8-week miscarriage back to back in 2020. What are the chances of having retained products of conception 2 cycles after the last miscarriage? Ultrasound on day 5, 2 months after the miscarriage, indicated the following: 11 millimeter endometrium, slightly heterogeneous, an 8 by 10 by 12 millimeter echogenic focus, no obvious vascular flow, likely endometrial polyp, but retained products of conception cannot be entirely excluded. If this is indeed a polyp, what do you recommend? I have 2 kids and can get pregnant easily, but I haven't been able to keep my pregnancies lately. AMH is 3, FSH is 6, LH 12, estradiol 25, DHEA normal, testosterone normal, vitamin D 21, TSH 3.19. Thank you for your help. So Nanda, a couple of things. With your vitamin D at 21, let's get it up. I'd have you start vitamin D 4,000 to 6,000 IUs per day. Talk to your doctor, make sure they agree. As far as your TSH of 3.19, I'm not going to jump in here and say you have a thyroid problem, but talk to your doctor about what they think your optimal thyroid levels should be. Typically, when you have a TSH of 3.9, we usually like to repeat the TSH, and then if it's still over 3, consider treating. We want the TSH to be closer to 2.5 or below before a pregnancy, and we don't just look at the TSH, we like to look at a complete thyroid panel. And as far as the polyp, that's what I call polyps. Polyps belong in a jar, not in your uterus. So I'm really, really careful, and I try and look at the outline of the uterus, doing saline sonograms, but if it's obviously there, then I would say consider removing it. And retained products of conception are a thing. It can happen after a miscarriage, and I always tell people your period's going to be wonky after a miscarriage, and I bring people in for a saline sonogram after a miscarriage just to make sure there's no retained products of conception. And then sometimes you can see just a little bit, and you wait 1 more cycle, and then hopefully it's gone, and if it's not, then I usually like to remove it so it doesn't calcify and get in the way. So you guys, well, thank you for hanging out with me tonight. I'm going to go through the live chatted questions, and for those of you who are joining me right now, and for those of you guys who have been joining me since the beginning and you're sick of me talking about my hat, I just want to explain why I'm wearing such a cute hat. I'm wearing a cute hat because someone gave it to me as a gift. I got so many cute gifts this week, including this fabulous picture of me and my sister. So a follower was watching and sees that I talk or listens, and she said, you talk about your sister all the time, so I thought I'd paint you a picture. You guys, that's really sweet. I love my sister. We scream at each other at least 3 times a day. And it's usually about this. Do you know what mommy did today? She called me. Do you know what she said? I'm telling you, no matter how old your mom gets, this stuff never ends. You continue to do that. Okay, this first question, do you recommend any of those fertility IVs or those not backed by actual research as being useful? So I would say, I have heard of the IVs. I don't recommend the IVs, but if you do the IVs and you like them and you feel good, I mean, a lot of it is like, you know, like going to Jamba Juice. Just go to Jamba Juice. Don't put it through your IV. Next question is thoughts on IUI. I think IUI is a great option. It's a good starting point for fertility treatment if it answers your 3 questions. What do I want? What is it going to take? And am I willing to do it? So if you will be able to get what you want from doing IUI, then the answer is do it. Next question. I just noticed the sperm on the momlet hat. Exactly. This is my momlet hat. This is the hat I wear. And when I do my IVF cycles, I actually go to the embryologist and I actually tell them, I'd like my momlet today to have 5 eggs. And they look at me like I'm crazy, and I don't care because I feel like I channel that energy, and I focus on exactly the number of eggs I want to get because I've done all my patients' ultrasounds, and then I tell the embryologist, make it happen. Next question, do you ever do exploratory laparoscopy to diagnose endo but not treat, then make embryos, then go back to treat? Doing it to figure out whether or not day 3 fresh transfers are a good option. So the answer is if you're going to do a laparoscopy and you see endometriosis, it would be silly not to remove it. So no, I don't just do it. It's called a peek and shriek, but you wouldn't shriek. You would peek and treat. Next question is, let's see here. Hi, Dr. Aimee. Is it bad to have a high progesterone level for a fresh transfer? I'm 33 years old. And the answer is talk to your doctor. Every lab's going to be a little bit different. Every doctor is going to have their own threshold for what progesterone level they feel comfortable moving forward with. Next question. I'm 37 doing IUI to try to conceive. Last 3 IUIs failed. My doctor does the same routine every time. Letrozole, ultrasound, trigger IUI. Nothing wrong with me. Help. So I would make sure you've gone through the tushymethod.com. Tushy, tubes, uterus, sperm, hormones, your genetics. I know, you've probably already done them. Do them again. If it's been more than a year since you've done any of these tests, this is a good time to do it. Look at sperm. Go dive a little bit deeper. Look at sperm DNA fragmentation. Look at your supplements. Look at your age. Voila, you said you're 37. Maybe it's time to think about IVF before you do anything else. And you can also add injectables to your IUI protocol to increase your chances of ovulating more than one egg. Next question is, what is implantation testing? ERA? Yeah, I call it dummy cycle, mock cycle, ERA receptiva cycle. I basically do it all and include a saline sonogram or a hysteroscopy at the same time. Next question is, which method is better or faster to get pregnant for a 35-year-old with normal hormones levels, open tubes, natural, or IUI? So IUI is really good in cases where you're fighting around ovulation and you feel like there's an ovulation or sex emergency and you guys just need to take it out of the bedroom. IUI is really good if a guy has sex drive issues. IUI is really good if the sperm quality is a little bit low. If it's a lot low, IUI is not really going to help you. So I don't know that IUI really helps things where you're having an active, healthy sex life, you guys aren't fighting around ovulation, and the sperm count is good. But sometimes a little boost can go a long way, so if you're ready to do IUI and you just want to try it, it might not be a bad idea. Next question is, have you ever seen the AFC or AMH go up after laparoscopy to remove endometriosis? And the answer is, it can happen because the AMH meanders, remember? It's the always meandering hormone. So if you had endometriosis surgery and you didn't have chunks of your ovary taken out, like an endometrioma, then perhaps your AMH isn't going to change much. Okay, next question is, I think my next question is, what am I going to have for dinner tonight? You guys, I'm going to take off. I love you guys. I love answering your questions. I love being here. I love everything about this community. You guys inspire me every single day. This is another fun gift that I got. I'm not sure what to call this. This is, these are cool. Whee! This is a cool mask. Look at that. Isn't that fancy? Love it. Okay, you guys have a wonderful night. Have a great weekend. Be well. Take really good care of yourselves. I love you all. And remember, you're worth it. You deserve it. You are who you're meant to be. And you're the best. I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.